The story takes place in South Africa's largest city, Johannesburg. It's dangerous there, with 300 armed attacks occurring every day. Due to the high crime rate, the government is deploying units of police robots known as Scouts. They were developed by Tetraval, and the company's stock skyrocketed after the robot's debut. News reports state that company assures the public of its robots' high level of security, claiming that no hacker can breach them. The company employs a man named Vincent Moore, a former military officer who is skeptical of the Scouts. Even before the Scouts appeared, Vincent had begun developing another robot called Moose, which is designed to be controlled by a human, as Vincent is opposed to artificial intelligence. He demonstrated a helmet that would translate a person's thoughts into the robot's actions. However, his project has not yet received adequate funding. Meanwhile, another company employee, the Scouts developer, a young genius engineer named Dion Wilson, is interested in creating not just a robot, but a sentient robot, a machine capable of experiencing emotions. Later, Scout 22 was delivered to Tetraval. The robot had been damaged while carrying out a combat mission. The employees took it in for inspection, and this wasn't the first time. This time, it had been run over by a car. The antenna was damaged, so the employees found a replacement. They ran diagnostics and activated the robot, ordering it to move toward the helicopter to carry out its mission. Meanwhile, a criminal gang was on the move through the city streets. A helicopter carrying the Scouts was pursuing the gang in a van. A man nicknamed Ninja got out of the van to confront the dangerous leader, Hippo. Ninja's team included a guy nicknamed America and a woman named Yolandi. They were supposed to deliver the goods to Hippo, but the entire shipment had been damaged. Hippo wouldn't tolerate such treatment and threatened them, emphasizing that Ninja now owed him $20 million for the goods. Suddenly, helicopters carrying Scouts flew in. Several robots disembarked and engaged in a firefight with Hippo's gang. The recently repaired 22nd successfully carried out his mission, while the Ninja, having lost the keys to the van, was forced to join the firefight, where he eventually found his keys. Suddenly, the 22nd Scout entered the building where Hippo had found an RPG, and as soon as the robot stepped inside, the criminal fired. The 22nd was taken out of action, and the police called for backup. Ninja and his two allies managed to escape in the van, but a bullet struck America, and Hippo fled from the robots on foot. Later, the news showed the scene of the incident, and the company's CEO, Michelle Bradley, announced an order for another 100 robots for the police. All of Dion's colleagues congratulated him on his success. Vincent watched this with envy. Michelle called him and advised him to present his moose to the police tomorrow, lowering the projected financial costs. Perhaps then they would be interested. Scout 22 was brought back to the mechanics. An RPG had hit it squarely in the chest, though the robot's brain remained intact. Dion glanced at it and sent it to be scrapped. Meanwhile, Ninja and Yolandi were helping the wounded America get to their hideout. Hippo called them, threatening again that they owed him $20 million. Ninja said he'd get the money. He had 7 days. The girl suggested to the guys that they rob an armored truck, a job worth $500 million. They'd pay off Hippo's debt and go completely underground with the money. Yolandi is convinced that if they find the person who develops the robots, he'll be able to disable the Scouts, and the gang will pull off the heist without a hitch. They found a photo of Dion on the company's website. Meanwhile, Dion has returned home from work. His house is completely cluttered with technology. Even his pet isn't a dog, but a robot named Dexter. He can clean up and even serves his owner energy drinks. Dion keeps a video diary of his project. Today is day 944, and he happily reports that he's getting closer to making his dream a reality. Dion works through the night until morning. After numerous errors in the code, he finally sees a successful result and wants to test his theory as soon as possible. Dion went to work, found a mechanic, and learned where Scout 22 is currently located. Dion went to see director Michelle and shared his discoveries. He's invented an artificial intelligence that will actually think for itself without human intervention, and will even be able to provide feedback on a poem or a painting. The woman was pleased with the young man's work, but their company was, after all, in the arms trade, not the art business. He begged her to test his theory on Scout 22, but she refused. Dion had no intention of giving up. Overcome by emotion, he took his access card and stole the firmware key, the only one in the entire company. He single-handedly took all the parts from Scout 22 out of the workshop, loaded them into his car, and drove home. A gang of criminals was now following him. They cut off Dion's path and kidnapped him. Meanwhile, Vincent was showing off his moose to the police. The police showed no interest, calling his moose expensive and ugly. They had enough Scouts for now. This stung Vincent, and he went to the restroom to compose himself. Meanwhile, Dion came too. They had doused him with water. Ninja threatened him and demanded information on how to shut down the robots. The scientist explained that they couldn't be turned off. They ran on firmware. Suddenly, America found a disassembled robot in Dion's van. Yolandi quickly came up with a new plan. Dion needed to reassemble Robot 22 and program it to be an ally of the gang. Dion explained that the only way was to try out his new theory, but the robot would have to be trained from scratch, just like a child. The result could be completely unpredictable. In the end, the gang agreed to the experiment. Dion began assembling the robot. Since the battery was attached to the frame, the charge would only last 5 days. Finally, man inserted the firmware key into the robot and launched the new program. Suddenly, the boot process finished, and the robot began to move. It was frightened and hid. Ninja Ninja wanted the robot to understand him right away. The girl, however, showed patience and calmed it down. 22nd analyzed everything and began to approach them. He timidly touched them and noticed Dion's watch. The robot picked it up and repeated the word watch after Dion. The man was incredibly happy. He ran to the car to get a rubber chicken toy and showed it to the robot. The robot even remembered Yolandi and Dion's names. The girl named Robot Chappie. Suddenly, a ninja ran up to them and started going crazy. He was chasing Dion away while Yolandi defended him. Dion had to leave even though he had planned to come back tomorrow. Meanwhile, late that evening at work, Vincent went to the workshop and saw that robot number 22 was missing. He checked the databases and began to wonder what Dion was up to. Later that morning, Chappie was walking around the grounds. He watched the sleeping gang, walked over to the fridge, and took out a carton of milk. The robot found the remote and turned on the TV, which was showing the series He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. The ninja woke up and thought it would be a good idea to teach the robot how to shoot. He showed Chappie how to shoot at the bottles. The robot got scared, so the criminal placed a gun in its hands, impatiently demonstrating how to hold it. Chappie fired and missed. The robot dropped the gun. Yolandi saw what he was doing and forbade Ninja from teaching him that. It was too soon. Ninja was furious and planned to go look for money to buy explosives for their plan. Dion arrived at work and was searching the internet for information on child development. When Vincent suddenly peeked over his shoulder, he pretended to be having a friendly conversation, but then suddenly asked Dion for the firmware key. Dion had forgotten the firmware key when he reprogrammed Chappie, and the criminals had kicked him out. It was a catastrophic mistake. Dion tried to explain that he couldn't give Vincent the firmware key without management's approval, when suddenly Vincent flew into a rage and pulled out a gun, blaming Dion for all his failures. Suddenly, Vincent pulled the trigger, but the gun was unloaded. Vincent laughed and said he was just joking. It was a prank, and since he was a man of faith, he invited all his colleagues to a meeting every Sunday. Later, Dion got into his van and left work. Vincent kept a close eye on him and followed, noting the unusual route. Meanwhile, Yolandi was teaching Chappie new words and showing him her rat. Chappie made rapid progress, repeating whole sentences after the girl and calling her mom. America tried it too, and the robot repeated after him. They liked the robot and were delighted with his progress. Suddenly, Dion pulled up to their hideout. Since Ninja wasn't there, he got lucky. Dion greeted the robot, to which Chappie replied, "Yo, just like a real gang member." Dion explained to Chappie that he was his creator and asked him to promise not to rob or threaten people. Dion brought him a book, as well as paints and an easel, and now the robot could distinguish colors. Suddenly, Vincent got out of the car, walked closer, and saw Dion and an unknown girl teaching the robot to paint. Suddenly, Chappie painted the car parked in front of him. Suddenly, a ninja arrived and shoved Dion, calling the robot not an artist, but a criminal. Ninja almost shot Dion, but Yolandi stopped him. Dion drove away. Suddenly, the informants called and said that the armored truck would be passing through the day after tomorrow. Ninja decided to take Chappie out into the world and put him in the car. America and Ninja dropped the robot off with the gangsters and drove away, even though the robot begged them not to leave him. The criminals were wary at first, but realized the robot wasn't hostile and started throwing rocks at him. They mercilessly attacked the robot and threw a Molotov cocktail at him. Chappie ran away. Meanwhile, Dion returned home and was throwing things around in a rage. He got a call from work telling him to hand over the firmware key by the end of the day, or else they would report him to the director. Vincent, after what he had seen, set his sights on robot number 22. He followed it while the scorched Chappie wandered through the city. A dog ran up to him, and the robot petted it like a human. Vincent and two allies found Chappie and shut him down with a device. Chappie woke up in a van and begged them not to touch him while Vincent sawed off the robot's arm. He pulled the firmware chip out of its head and was about to completely cut the robot apart. Suddenly, Chappie said, "I'm not afraid anymore," and pushed the men away. The robot leaped out onto the road. Since Chappie had a built-in GPS, he returned to the spot where the criminals were. He was badly damaged and missing an arm. The robot told the girl what had happened to him. Ninja apologized to Yolandi, saying he hadn't known this would happen. They had spare parts for the robot, which they retrieved from Dion's van, so America replaced his arm. The robot asked the girl to read him a book of fairy tales that his creator had brought. The story was about a black sheep that was different from all the others. The robot realized it was about him. The girl told him about the soul and said she loved him. The next day, Dion went to a gun shop and bought a gun. Chappie had a doll that looked like Yolandi when suddenly Ninja came to see him. He suggested that Chappie start over and apologized. Ninja told him to get rid of the doll and began showing him how to act in order to look cool. He wanted Chappie to practice shooting, but Robot replied that he couldn't hurt people. America decided to try a different strategy, and instead of a firearm, showed him how to use a knife, explaining that a knife simply puts a person to sleep. While they were trying to trick the robot, Chappie thought he'd practice putting them to sleep with the knife right on them and started swinging it around. They continued to teach the robot combat techniques, put chains on him, and spray painted him. The three of them set out to test Chappie's skills. Ninja came up with a story that his car had been stolen and that Chappie had to get his dad's car back. Chappie grabbed a gun, ran to the car, and started smashing it up, throwing the driver out of the vehicle. Ninja complained that he needed cars in one piece, not wrecked, so Chappie decided to try again. On the way, they met a woman and Chappie stole her car. Then he tried again and even got behind the wheel himself. They drove the cars to the dealership and traded them for explosives. It started to rain, and while Chappie was waiting for the men, he saw a dog. Ninja lectured him that life is complicated and that to survive, you have to fight. Ninja explained that Chappie's energy level was low right now and that Dion, his creator, was to blame. Ninja explained that he would get him a new body, but for that to happen, Chappie would have to go on a mission with them. He gave Chappie a choice. What kind of dog did he want to be? Alive or not? Meanwhile, Dion, now armed, headed to the criminal's base. He wanted to retrieve the robot. Yolandi said they weren't there. Suddenly, a van pulled up. It was Chappie with the criminals, but now the robot wasn't responding to Dion at all. Instead, he was unpacking the loot. Now, Chappie spoke like a street criminal. Chappie said he knew about his broken body and asked why his creator had made him mortal. Dion simply hadn't known that the 22nd would become so intelligent. Meanwhile, Vincent went to the work computer in the middle of the night, inserted a firmware chip, and updated the firmware on all existing scouts. This caused all the police robots to shut down. Dion began to lose his mind and threatening Ninja and took the robot. Suddenly, Hippo received a call from a police insider. All the police robots were down. This was a chance for criminals to plunge the city into chaos. They were smashing storefronts, gunshots rang out, and cars were burning. At police headquarters, they mobilized all available reserve units and tried to contact Director Michelle. Suddenly, Vincent spotted Dion's van on the security cameras. Dion had brought Chappie. Meanwhile, Vincent went into hiding. On his computer, Dion saw that a virus file named Genesis had been downloaded, causing all the robots to shut down. Suddenly, Chappie managed to boot up. He curiously examined his surroundings and was amazed by the robot moose. Suddenly, he noticed a test body just like his own. He wanted Dion to transfer his consciousness into that body, but Dion said it was impossible. You can't simply copy a consciousness. Chappie threw a tantrum, claiming that Dion didn't love him. Completely shocked by the robot's words, Vincent even crossed himself. Chappie took the neuro helmet from the robot moose, which converts thoughts into actions, and ran away. Director Michelle called Dion. A team arrived on the scene to resolve the situation. The robot ran to the criminal's base, where Yolandi asked him what it all meant. Chappie plugged in the helmet and demonstrated it Yolandi, explaining that consciousness is energy. He wants to understand how to extract it. He found all the necessary information online. Meanwhile, Michelle met with Dion and tasked him with finding out what was happening with the robots. Vincent overheard the conversation and seized the moment to promote his robot Moose, again asking Michelle to send Moose to assist the police. She refused. It wasn't the right time. Meanwhile, Chappie was trying to extract his consciousness, but nothing was working. Finally, after several attempts, he saw his consciousness on the screen. Ninja walked in and the robot boasted about his achievement. Now he had to fulfill his promise and take part in the heist. The criminals were getting ready and arming themselves. At 7 a.m., the armored truck pulled up and they set about carrying out their plan. Meanwhile, Dion was trying to resolve the situation and was looking for even the slightest clue as to who might have uploaded the virus to the scouts. Suddenly, he realized it had been done from Workstation 219, that is, from Vincent's computer. Suddenly, everyone watched in shock as the news showed Scout 22 helping to rob the armored truck. Chappie was loading the money into the truck when he suddenly saw the frightened police officer he had wounded. Only then did he realize what he had done and he apologized. Suddenly, during the conference, Vincent burst in on Michelle. He told her about the sentient robot he'd seen the day before. Vincent convinced her that Dion and his robot had to be eliminated, as this would damage the company's reputation, and Michelle's in particular. Under pressure, she agreed and confirmed authorization to launch Moose. From the workshop, Dion loaded the weapons into a car and drove off. Hippo watched the ninja's plan on TV, and the crime boss wanted a robot like that for himself too. Vincent was preparing to launch Moose. He put on a helmet and mentally controlled the robot, which flew straight out through a hatch in the ceiling. Meanwhile, in the van, already loaded with the stolen money, Chappie wanted the ninja to give him a new body, but the ninja admitted there wasn't one. The robot realized he'd been tricked. They arrived at the base. Chappie got angry and shoved Ninja. Suddenly, Dion pulled up. He warned them there was no time for arguments, since a moose robot was flying toward them and intended to destroy Chappie. Dion had brought a weapon for Chappie, but the robot refused to take it. Just then, Hippo arrived with his allies. Ninja opened fire on them while Chappie was still debating whether to take the weapon. Suddenly, the moose arrived, and Vincent, controlling it, mercilessly eliminated America. The ninja wanted to avenge his friend, but the bullets didn't harm the moose. Vincent seized the moment and activated all the robot's capabilities. launching cluster bombs. When the moose approached Dion, Chappie finally grabbed his weapon and fired grenade rounds directly at the moose's most vulnerable spots. Chappie attached explosives to the enemy robot but didn't have time to activate them. Yolandi ran out to protect Chappie, but he stood up and shielded her from the bullets with his body. Chappie ordered Dion to get in the car and drive away, but suddenly Hippo intervened. Ninja tried to protect Dion but was shot in the leg, and Hippo still managed to shoot Dion as well. Ninja destroyed Hippo, and Chappie picked up the wounded Dion and put him in the van. Suddenly, Chappie rushed to grab the neuro helmet. Ninja ordered the robot to get behind the wheel and drive Dion and Yolandi as far away from there as possible. Ninja fearlessly stood in front of the moose to hold it back, when suddenly Yolandi got out of the car and fired her grenade launcher at the moose after all. Even from a distance, the robot saw her kill the girl. Chappie didn't have time to protect her. He noticed the detonator for the explosives, which he hadn't managed to press earlier, and this time he finally managed to activate it. Vincent's robot exploded and turned into scrap metal. The ninja limped over to the girl, overcome with despair. He cried and apologized. Dion knew who had killed Yolandi, and now Chappie wanted nothing more than to avenge her. He and Dion drove to the workshop where Vincent was sitting. Vincent tried to run away, but Chappie threw a wrench at his leg and stopped him. Vincent ran to the main office toward the employees, and the robot asked why he had hurt Yolandi. He snatched the weapon from the man's hands and shoved him. Everyone, terrified, fled the building, including the shock director, Michelle. The robot tossed Vincent around the office. Chappie said that Vincent was a terrible person, but that he forgave him nonetheless. Chappie ran to Dion. Since the robot had previously researched how to transfer consciousness into another body, he now wanted to apply his knowledge to save Dion. And suddenly, after the consciousness was uploaded, the robot came to life. Dion was now in the robot's body. He was completely stunned. A group of police reinforcements had already cut open the door. While there was still a little time left, Dion wanted Chappie to transfer himself into a new body as well, so that he could survive. They chose the body of Scout number 39. And Chappie put on the helmet, even though he was scared. Dion initiated the consciousness transfer and ran away himself, since the team had already cut through the door and entered. Suddenly, as Dion was running away in his new body, he saw robot number 39 come to life on the street. Now, this is Chappie's new body. Meanwhile, at the criminal's base, Ninja was in utter despair. He was burning photos of Yolandi. Suddenly, he pulled out a box containing Yolandi's doll, and inside was a flash drive. It contained Yolandi's consciousness, which she and Chappie had previously copied when the robot was demonstrating the helmet to her. Dion and Chappie went to the base to see Ninja and explained everything to him. Together, they said goodbye to Yolandi's old body, and Chappie promised to build her a new one. Meanwhile, the news reported that the police had stopped using robots and had called up another 15,000 people from the reserves. Later, Chappie remotely connected to the Tetraval robotics devices and manufactured parts for Yolandi's future body. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to share your thoughts on this movie in the comments. Give it a like and subscribe to the Movie Fist channel so you don't miss out on interesting movie plots.